What should I do to overcome lustful thoughts towards my married partner? Now, this is a question I've heard before, especially from young men who are bombarded with this spiritual concept that lust is a sin and lust is something that doesn't fit into a spiritual life. It doesn't fit into Gurmat. It doesn't fit into the kind of mindset. But they're constantly battling with the fact that they have it within them. And they think that when you get married, that's the end of lust. And then all of a sudden you're presented with the fact that you now have a person in front of you that you're going to lust over. So how do I deal with that? And lust is not the same thing as sexual attraction. It's not the same thing. And I think this is where people have really misunderstood this concept of lust. The way I make a clear distinction between lust and attraction is lust is sexual obsession as opposed to just attraction. You're supposed to be attracted to your wife. If you're not attracted to your wife, you're not going to be able to procreate. You're not going to be able to have any children. So you need to have an element of sexual attraction. But I don't say you need to have an element of lust. Lust is the point at which you can't think about anything else. It's like the difference between having frustration in your life and having a blind rage in your life. They're two very different things. You could be frustrated at someone and it's not the same as having uncontrollable rage. You can have some desires in your life and it's not the same as having greed. And so people need to understand that lust is the extreme version of sexual attraction.
I think it's important for this topic that there isn't necessarily, especially in a context of marriage, there shouldn't be a guilt associated with it. I mean, yes, of course, if something is becoming overly obsessive, it's for the individual to reflect on that and think, well, do I really want to be preoccupied with this? And yes, there are, whether it's a better understanding or whether it's distractions and whether other ways to kind of to not be so obsessed with it all the time. But especially within the context of a marriage, it's like it will evolve. And just because you're so crazy about it at one time doesn't mean that's always going to be necessarily the same.
And talk about it and have a conversation with the other person about it. Like, ultimately, in a marriage, you have to share everything together. You're sharing your lives together. You're sharing all of your time. You're sharing your bodies with each other. So it's important that you should be able to have a partner that you can talk to about your feelings to. And if you can't just have an open, honest conversation with them about what are your needs, what are your desires, then you're always going to be having this conflict inside you. You're going to be holding these feelings inside you when really the one person who you should be able to talk to is your married partner.
Yeah, it's almost a shame to have a guilt associated with that within a marriage. I mean, I can understand, having lustful thoughts outside of a marriage. That's more of, I would have thought, a normal question. I mean, but to actually be guilty about having too much lust within a marriage, it's almost
there's no room for it.
Yeah.
I don't think there's room for that. And guilt only comes from the fact that A, you think you're doing something wrong, and B, you're not able to get another person's perspective on it. So you're just kind of living in your own little mind, and you're telling yourself this story all over again. We'll talk to someone about it, and maybe they'll just give you a different way of looking at the same thing.